Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Forest podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is season 6, and today we're finally going to be doing the episode that we've been talking about, which is our favorite Space-Papi, Bail Organa, played by the amazing Jimmy Smits, uno de los nuestros. Thank you very much. But before we get into that, I feel like it would be irresponsible for us to not talk about the season 2 Andor trailer that just dropped today on Monday that we're recording a couple days before we release the episode. So what did you think about that trailer?
It's so serendipitous, right? Because we've been talking about Andor a couple weeks now, and obviously we're going to continue to talk about it in the lead up to the show. So we just got that special look or whatever it was called fairly recently. So it's I wasn't expecting a trailer at all. Definitely, I mean, most certainly not this week. So imagine my surprise today, Monday, when we're recording, when I go into work, Monday blues. Gotta send emails, gotta answer emails, gotta put out fires, gotta
All of the things.
set some fires, I guess. And then all of a sudden, I just see on the socials because when you're at work, there's two modes at work. Either you don't have anything to do, so you can scroll on the on your phone a little bit and see what's going
Or
on.
you're super busy and totally focused, and you block out the entire world, which is usually what I'm doing.
Exactly. Thankfully, like I have leisure time. We definitely have different kinds of
And you can warn me about the things that are coming out because usually I am oblivious. So it works
Exactly.
out. Symbiosis.
So imagine my surprise, when all of a sudden I'm working, and when I happen to open Blue Sky, I see someone post like, "Oh, final trailer for Andor season 2," and I was like, "Oh, what? Like on a Monday?
Really?
What is this, guys?" So thanks to the fine people at Lucasfilm, we got a new Andor trailer, and it was the trailer that I thought we were gonna get the first time around.
Right.
Moody, dark, continuing, all the vibes that we got from Andor season 1. So it's very interesting to me because the first one felt like this is a trailer for everyone that wasn't already on board, and we want to get people from non-Star Wars fans and non-Andor fans that would otherwise not tune into it to get into it, like the pop trailer, right? And this one was, this is for everyone else that's already on the Andor vibe to get on the hype train, even though they were already on the hype train. We were already on the hype train. And I think that this trailer delivered in spades. It's the exact mood that I wanted. It gave us some juicy bits that we're going to talk about now. But it also gave us what I think might be quasi confirmation. And I say quasi because I don't want to say it's absolute, and I don't want to get my hopes up. Again, this is responsible speculation, as we always like to do. But I think that there was a scene in which our Space-Papi, Bail Organa,
might show up. Okay, let's see if I can guess it.
So, what do you think of the trailer before you guess? What did you think?
Okay. So the trailer, I think we already talked about the first one that was released, and we did comment that there was a lot of like Emmy award winning or like critically acclaimed, and there was like a lot of that happening. And it makes sense to be promotional as well, because it is a well-regarded show that maybe people who are not necessarily interested in Star Wars would still enjoy watching. So I was completely okay with this. But this one, it still had like maybe 2 sentences saying about the critically acclaimed part, because it is. But then that was it. The rest of it was, a little bit more like what we expect to see from the show. We kind of see little intros to what will probably end up being very epic speeches, especially from Mon Mothma specifically. Like that intro of it, like seeing the actual anger character of her when she's like finally had it with the ridiculousness of the Empire, which is great. We already have a lot of Luthen things happening, and Andor himself like starting to question like, what if we screw this up? Because I mean, there is so much that can go wrong and everything that we're doing. It's always a pleasure to see a glimpse of the Death Star. And it's also really cool that, again, it doesn't really give you all that much. So it's kind of things that we already know. The Death Star, K2SO, who is playing on whose side. We saw Saw Gerrera. We finally saw our best boy Brasso.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm, mhm.
give him a
Even
break.
even scruffier, even scruffier
I know, and
than
I love
before.
it. I'm all here for it. I mean, but it's really kind of evocative of the whole like we're all in now. So if
Yeah,
this
yeah.
fails, we're all screwed. And obviously we know how the story ends. So it's, you know,
Doesn't
kind of
spoiler alert, doesn't end well for some people. Maybe all of
yes.
them, who knows? Eh.
Correct. I mean, but one of the surprising things is that we get like this little clip of like Deidre, and it looks
Mhm,
like
mhm.
she's kind of gone insane or
Yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I think she was one of those characters that was really interesting the first time around, and seeing
Mhm.
her development is going to be great because I think one of the things that we really loved about Andor season one is that you get to see the story from both sides,
Yeah,
not just like the heroes of the rebellion side. We get to see it from the Empire side and how some of the like most of these characters nobody thinks of themselves as the villain in their own story,
correct,
so
correct.
it's great to see them like how they rationalize to themselves that what they're doing is okay on the Empire side. So I don't know, I'm really really pumped. I mean, I was already really pumped for Ender season 2, but it's like all the anticipation. I can't wait.
Correct.
How about you?
There's a theory online. Well,
Okay.
not a theory. Like some people think that that scene that you were referencing
The Dedron.
about Dedra.
Mhm.
I want to see your thoughts on this because I've made up not made up my mind, but like I'm pretty sure about where I land on the spectrum about this. But there's that scene that you're talking about. Some people are
Mhm.
saying that it looks like she's getting force choked.
Oh,
Do
because
you
she's like
think? Yeah,
holding on to.
exactly. How do you feel about that theory? And do you sympathize with it, or do you get on board with it?
Honestly, that's not what I thought it looked like. I thought
Same,
it
me
looked
too.
a
Yep.
little bit more of kind of a claustrophobic,
Yep.
like kind of ripping off whatever is like binding her. Like once you have those like overwhelming sense of losing control. It
Hmm.
didn't look to me like a forced choke.
I agree.
So
Yeah,
I'm gonna say no.
I agree. 100%
Okay.
agree.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree on that one. I think it's one of those things where, especially since director Krennic, Ben Mendelsohn's character, is back, it's maybe like she's at odds with him. So like she's being
Yeah.
put in a position where either she feels frustrated about not being able to do what she wants, or she's
Yeah.
finally seeing the Empire for what it is, and she's cracking. I'm not saying that she's going to turn to the rebellion because I don't
Yeah.
think I don't want that. Some characters can just we don't not every character needs to, do
Switch
the
sides.
Empire to Rebel thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
But having like those doubts and like that gray area is like, oh, am I wrong? I think it would be very interesting for a character development, especially after what you witnessed in Ferrex in season
Yeah.
one, at the end of season one. So
Hmm.
yeah, firmly on the side, no force choke,
Hmm.
because who's it gonna be? Vader? Like Vader was a big deal for Krennic to be able to see in Rogue One, and now you're gonna tell me that Vader shows up to choke Dedra? I don't
Already?
think so. And then
No.
who's the other person it could be? Palpatine? Do you think Palpatine's gonna come down from the Imperial Palace to have a one-on-one? No, come on. He's busy. Come on. He's
Yeah.
busy doing the Final Order Star Destroyers on Exegol on Zoom with the Sith Eternal over there. So
Yeah.
and yeah, and Tony Gilroy's not going to bring a new Force user to no. This she's having
No.
a panic attack, an anxiety
Yeah.
attack, or
Hmm.
something of the sort.
Yeah.
So I'm glad
Agreed.
that
Mhm.
that we're on the same page on that. But there was also like a really good quote from Saw Gerrera that I liked, because mostly the things that we've seen from Saw are more or less the same that we saw in the
Yeah.
previous looks. But we got two kind of new things. Obviously, the shot of him at the end at Jeddah, which is kind of like the mirror
Yeah.
of Rogue One, but also the line where he says, "Revolution is not for the sane," which I thought was so
Nice.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially,
Yeah.
especially like in our day and age, right? Where we're
Yeah.
kind of like in the cusp
Yeah.
of so many different things happening
Mhm.
politically, and not
Yeah.
just here in the United States, but
Yeah.
elsewhere in the world. Like there's a lots of madness going on. I think that
Mhm.
it's very I mean, we've talked about it before in season 1, and we continue to talk about it now in the lead up to season 2, but the show is poignant, right?
Yeah.
It's very much a mirror, intentional or not, from Tony Gilroy's writing. So,
And I do
but
believe it is intentional.
100%. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely sure that it's 100% intentional,
Yeah.
but Lucasfilm slash Disney is telling him, cool your jets, like when you're we know
Yeah.
this is a political show and we know you're doing X,
But
Y, and Z, but when
mhm.
people ask you,
It's
to
entertainment. It's
skirt
okay.
around
Yeah.
the issue, and he's done
Mhm.
magnificently, like skirting around the issue by saying like, no, this is historical, because it might
Mhm.
appear that way because history repeats itself and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, okay, Tony, I'll buy it. But
Mhm.
I wanted to talk specifically about one scene in the trailer. Well, no, actually, no. Before I talk about that one scene in the trailer, let's
If
go to
I
see
guess,
if you can guess which scene, yeah, from
you
that
you
was the
think
one that I think
is a
is
possible Bail
the
moment.
possible bail moment. Yeah.
It's Mon Mothma talking to somebody when she's saying, "We must stand together, or we will be crushed."
And the answer is yes. That is
Yes.
absolutely one. I didn't even have to do like
100%.
that much of a lead up to it, but yes, that is
Mhm.
100% the scene. I mean, we should see someone's back, and it just
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, maybe it's not him, but
Yeah.
it. And this is gonna be the seg right into just talking about Bail Organa. It
Yeah.
just makes sense for this person, this character,
Mhm.
this legend, this Space-Papi, to return to this show in
Yeah.
that capacity because the Empire has Ben Mendelsohn come in as a new foil. So I feel like the rebellion needs that other character to come in and
Mhm.
balance the stakes. And I'm not saying that Jimmy's like Bail Organa is gonna have a role as large as Director Krennic appears to have in season two, but I do think that he'll be like a balancing force. Like
Mhm.
Director Krennic comes in and Bale comes in, and he's gonna be like that backdoor ally for Mon Mothma that she's then talking to in that scene. And somehow he's, gonna show up maybe like in an episode or two max. I don't think he's gonna show
Yeah.
up that much. He's gonna, in my mind, show up as much as Saw did in season one. But yeah, you hit it right on the head. Like, what did you think about that scene and its potential for Bale? And did you think it was Bale when you saw that
Um,
scene?
I maybe wouldn't have picked up on it if it wasn't for the fact that you said it's like I'm pretty sure there's like a scene where our Space-Papi shows up. So I was specifically looking for something as I was watching the trailer for the first time, and as soon as I landed on that scene, it's like, "What? That's
That's it.
probably it."
That's the one.
Um, and then especially because we've been talking about the scenes that were cut from the
Hmm.
prequel trilogy, and a lot of those are that relationship between Padme, Mon Mothma, and Bale, and how they were kind of like the parents of the rebellion, and
Hmm.
how they were moving all these unseen pieces. But so far we've seen only obviously Padme's dead,
Hmm.
and then Mon Mothma and Lucien are the ones that we've seen so far kind of like moving things around. But
Hmm.
I think it would make sense in this point in time to have this other political ally who's also a
Hmm.
senator, who also is very powerful, as the leader of Alderaan, to kind of just have those 2 cents of, Mon Mothma is like desperate. She doesn't know how anything's like really going to turn out. It's like, I need this other ally.
Yeah.
We've talked about rebelling before. We need to stand together now to move it forward. So I think
Yeah.
Bale would be a really great character to have that role going further into the rebellion. But again, as always, I'm not gonna get 100%, my hopes up. It could
Correct.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
any number of people really, but Bale would be clutch. Cause I mean, I think Jimmy
Hmm.
Smits has, nailed that character so many
Yeah.
times that I mean, I'd just be ecstatic about it.
And I feel like every time he comes back, he's just better. So like it's just, I mean, he was obviously good in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, but like those moments when he arrives in Rogue One, his
Yeah.
small role in oh my god, in
Obi-Wan.
thank no yeah, in Obi-Wan he's just
Yeah.
incredible. So
Yeah.
I'm just like every time I'm not tired of him and I want to see more of him. But before we keep going with Bill Organa, there's like one thing from the trailer also that kind of stood out, and it's the scene that Luthen is talking to Cassian, and they're talking about like I don't remember exactly the words that
Yeah.
that Cassian was saying, but he's basically saying, "Oh, it's gonna burn," and
Yeah.
like and Luthen confirms, and he's like, "Yeah, it's gonna like burn the brightest" or something like that. Which
Yeah.
the way that that conversation was going, and the
Hmm.
way that Luthen answered that, it kind of
Another speech moment.
not confirmed, but uh, pointed me in the direction that I've been thinking in that Luthen, because a lot of the internet has been speculating that Luthen is the instigator of the
Right.
Gorman massacre. Like obviously he's not the cause,
All
but
right.
he
Mm-hmm.
accelerate. He's the accelerant, right? That
Mm-hmm.
that sets the powder keg and makes it blow. Yeah, but that scene when he talks to Cassian and says that, I'm just like, oh, that kind of sounds kind of right
Okay.
for that. And in that way, I think it's important then to have Bail, because then Bail is the counterbalance to Saw and Luthen, because then you have
Yeah.
Luthen and Saw like in these extreme,
Super
yeah,
militant and yeah.
yeah, super militant and like, no prisoners type of warfare
Mm-hmm.
and attitude. And I think it's important to have Mon Mothma then have a ally that comes and complements her in terms of like how she's
Yeah.
approaching the
Let's not
rebellion.
murder everyone yet, please.
Yeah,
Let's, cooler heads.
because maybe it comes to
Mm-hmm.
one point where, I mean, we know in Rogue One that Saw and Mon Mothma are kind of estranged and not really, well, not estranged is the wrong word because they're not a couple. They're, they're not,
Butting heads.
they're butting heads, and like they only need, they need Jin to be able to reconnect with Saw.
Yeah.
So at this point, maybe she's also gets yeah, far away from Luthen or something, because they don't see eye to eye with how things are going,
Mm-hmm.
with the effort, right, to take down the empire, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, and that's where Bale comes in. And it's interesting because still reading Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed, which reading extremely slowly, but it's such a delicious book so far, and I've enjoyed every single word that I've read of the book thus far. But and I think I mentioned this last time. One of the key things about the book is the book's about mainly about Saw Gerrera, Mon Mothma, and our homeboy Bail Organa.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that the book very plainly kind of paints is how Bail and Mon Mothma don't like each other.
Okay.
They're kind of on the same side of most issues
Right.
for the most part.
Okay.
But the book is very blunt about being Padme was the glue that kept
Okay.
all of them together, and now that Padme is out of the picture, they're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
floating away from each other. And she
Okay.
particularly doesn't like to deal with him because he's too idealistic and and
Mm-hmm.
maybe not aggressive, but bombastic in how he
Mm-hmm.
wants to approach his attitudes towards the empire. So may come to reason, and maybe the book ends this way, or maybe some of the other books explain this.
Right.
But maybe Mothma and Bale grow that far that they're no longer, talking anymore, and maybe the
Right.
show kind of shows them coming back together in some
Okay.
capacity. But I don't know. Those are just my theories about Bale. What do you think about his uh, potential role in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you on what you were saying because if it's at least if it's him in that scene that we've pointed out, it kind of seems like she's desperate and it's kind of like we must stand together. So if they were having a good relationship,
Mhm.
she wouldn't necessarily have to say that. So it would make sense that they had become, you know, had gotten into a fight and weren't as close and decided to go their separate ways in the way that they wanted to handle it. And this is
Mhm.
the reaching out, the olive branch, the I need you on my side because you have a cooler head like me, and we can't let it get out of control by just letting Luthen and Saw be the leaders. And they
Mhm.
just want to watch everything burn. They don't necessarily care about, the consequences of going way too far. So I'm actually just gonna say I agree with you, and that's a good if it is him, that would be a good role for him to play. And then, like you said, just do one or two episodes, small appearances that are important, but that don't take away from the rest of the show.
Mhm.
Because we don't necessarily want, Bale, who's been so important in so many other areas, to kind of steal the spotlight of some of the characters that I feel really need to grow up during the season. So I guess we'll see.
But it's one of those things too where you can have too much of a good thing, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
they could overuse a character, right? So like, I don't want
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Bale to come in and just like take over the show and have it
Right, right.
be the Bail Organa show. I don't want that
Yeah.
either.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't want it to be like Rogue One, where he just comes in for like this, one scene to be like, oh,
Yeah.
I can say the right things that are epic that also sets up episode 4, and then go back into the shadows,
Goodbye.
which
Yeah.
don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
awesome,
Was still
because
awesome.
I
Yeah.
remember that moment in Rogue One, the first time I saw it in theaters, and it was amazing.
I mean,
So
Rogue One is amazing.
yeah,
So
we need to.
okay.
I need to do. We need to do a rewatch
Yeah, I haven't done a rewatch in
of
a
Rogue
while,
One.
but
I haven't seen
it's
it.
amazing.
It's funny. It's funny though, because there's somebody on the Trial of the Force Discord. Which, by the way, if you haven't joined the Trial of the Force Discord, What are you waiting for? The link is down in the description below. Join it right now, and you can tell us all your juicy theories. We have channels for everything that you want to discuss in Star Wars and other nerd-related media. But anyway, there's someone
Mhm.
on the Discord who hasn't seen Rogue One and just
Oh,
started Andor season one, and they were saying like, "Oh,
okay.
maybe I should watch Rogue One after finishing season one." And like we were saying, like, "No, maybe do this backwards."
Just wait. Yeah.
All of us have seen Rogue One before Andor, so we gotta know how it
Mhm.
ends. So maybe
Yeah.
like wait and like have the reverse experience.
Yeah, and see
Then
the
if you
build
want
up
to
to what happens. Yeah.
exactly, and then
Yeah.
once it kind of fits, right? Because
Yeah.
Tony Gilroy has said that each Andor arc is basically a movie. So it's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
you get
Mhm.
the 4 movies of the season, and then you finish it off with a movie.
Rogue One.
Yeah,
The conclusion to the story.
so I think that would be awesome. But yeah, anyway, to bring it back around to Bail Organa, definitely one of those things where I want him to have a beefier role because so far everything we've seen from the trailer in one way or another confirms things that we know or were
Mhm.
expecting from
Yeah.
season two. So I think that's very deliberate. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
you kind of think you know, but I hope it's this way. It's like one of
Yeah.
those I think you know,
We
but you
get
don't know
tricked.
type of thing.
Yep.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I hope that the surprises, outweigh the comfort of certainty, and that maybe one of those things where we'll get more than we expect is in Bale's role, which I don't know. Maybe he sets up the base in Dantooine. I don't know. Maybe we see him go to Alderaan and talk to Brea, his wife, to see like what they're thinking about for establishing this rebellion. And maybe there's a cameo of little baby Leia, in the background
Yeah.
or something. But I wouldn't mind seeing an expanded role for Jimmy Smits in this series, considering how I mean, obviously he had a substantial role in the prequel trilogy,
Right.
but I feel like he's due also for like a moment to shine in a also substantial role in the in this post Disney era. Because right now he's had like little bits and pieces, which have been
Yeah.
amazing, especially in Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I kind
Yeah.
of want some Jimmy Smits gravitas on this one because
I'm okay with that too.
we
Mhm.
know he can carry a scene. Have you seen him in Dexter or any of the other amazing shows that he's
Mhm.
been on? He's great.
Mhm.
But what would be your wild card? Not wild card, but like your wildest theory of how Bail Organa could show up in this show? Because there's so many things that it could be.
I hate it when you put me on the spot like this. I'm
I
so
have to.
terrible
I
at the
have to. I have
wild
to.
speculations.
I
I
have
can
to.
never come up with
I
anything.
must. I must.
You must. You must. Um, I have no idea. I have no idea.
That's kind of a better
Maybe
way. That's kind of a better place to
maybe if
be.
it turns out that he's like actually best friends with Luthen and we have the relationships completely wrong and think that they're different sides, but they actually are like pals.
Interesting. Now that you said that, I was thinking
Hmm.
in opposite
Opposite.
direction. There we go. Where
Mhm.
he's actually when we see him first, he's with Director Krennic.
Okay.
So Mon Mothma thinks that he's just like kind of left his rebellious
Okay.
side and is now allied with the Empire.
Okay.
So he's maybe
Okay.
playing like the long con or something, and maybe
Okay.
there's a name drop for like Galen Erso because he kind of like knows what's up. So he's trying to like figure it out, kind of being a double agent thing with Krennic. But then
Mm.
Mon and him are kind of like playing the game. Like, wait, whose side are you on? Should I trust you? Should I not trust you?
Yeah.
Playing like a cat and mouse thing with each other.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if there's time to do that because there's such a busy season already.
There's so
But
much. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see when it comes out. We're usually wrong, but who knows? If it actually comes through any of our theories, you heard it here first.
yeah, maybe there's maybe that scene when Mon Mothma's giving the speech in the Senate.
Hmm.
We'll see. We see that there's different pods that are already on floating in the
Yeah.
Senate. So maybe we'll see. I don't know. Maybe we'll see Masameda on this one. That would be awesome to see. But maybe Bale is one of those senators that's floating around and hovering and also
Right.
giving speeches. Maybe not as
Hmm.
incendiary as the one that Mon Mothma was doing, but based on what he's saying, maybe that's
Hmm.
what inspires her to be like, okay, we're going scorched earth on this one,
Yeah.
and I don't know. It's gonna be good. But yeah, I'm excited for now this is the problem of doing all this responsible speculation. I'm getting irresponsible now, and not just getting irresponsible, but getting uh, eating with my eyes too much, and not satiating my wants and desires of Andor, because now I must have Bail
Now you
Organa,
must have Bail.
not just as a not just as a small character in the show, but
Hmm.
now he needs to be co-lead
With heft.
with heft. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want Jimmy Smits to be like in the main credits, like second name after Diego Luna, because I want to see those two. I want to see those two space pappies, one after
Yeah.
the other, and
Hmm.
and top billing. But we'll
Hmm.
see. We'll see. Only so few weeks left to wait. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. It's less than a month now.
But until then, I don't know. Did you have any closing thoughts on Bail Organa or the Andor season 2 trailer that we just witnessed?
Yeah. I just want to say that I think Bale being cast as Jimmy Smits, it was such a wonderful, wonderful casting decision. I remember when, the prequels came out and we never really knew anything about how Leia grew up, because we get to see Luke growing up, somewhat in the original trilogy,
Mhm,
and we have an idea like where he comes from, why his ideals are a certain way, but we don't know anything about Leia except that she's the princess of Alderaan.
mhm, mhm,
Alderaan gets blown up to smithereens, and we never get to meet her family. And there's like what one comment she makes to Luke, uh, and correct me if I'm wrong, in return, when he asks her if she remembers her mother.
mhm,
And at
mhm,
the time, at least I kind of always assumed that she was talking about her biological mother. That how she had actually gotten to meet her biological
mhm,
mother. But obviously, we find out later that Padme died instantaneously after the kids were born. So now knowing that she was talking about her adoptive mother, we have a little glimpse of what like that family was like. But then you see Bale and you see what kind of strong, amazing person this is, and then you start to understand why Leia wasn't just a princess. She was a
mhm, mhm,
senator.
mhm.
She was raised with these values, and then she ends up being a general for the rebellion. So getting that insight into Bail Organa, I think, was such a genius move because then we get to learn so much about how Leia became who she is. And then
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
added even more with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show that some people have had mixed feelings about. I actually loved it. But getting to
Right,
see
yeah.
Leia at that young age and with how her parents were raising her and everything that happens, it just lends so much more gravitas to her character. And she is one of my all-time favorite characters. So I think, Jimmy Smits as Bale was fantastic. So if all the Bail Organa you want to give me, I'm here for it.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things that, at least for me, it's one of those things that you don't appreciate when you're younger. It's the and we've
Hmm.
I mean, we've talked about representation and inclusion,
Yeah.
because even though some governments, namely ours, wants to
Yeah.
ban words, which is like
Yeah.
kind of a creepy thing to do, banning words. But anyway, we've talked about that, about how important it is to kind of see yourself on screen, and like at the time, right? Like you don't really put it together necessarily, but now in hindsight, it's just like, oh crap! Like we had like this wonderful cast of
Yeah.
actors in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, and all of a sudden, like there's this one guy that's just like, oh, he happens to be of Puerto Rican descent, and it's just like
Yeah.
that's the first time in the Star Wars in both trilogies that we kind of see that kind of representation happening, and
Yeah.
it's important, right, to acknowledge it and celebrate it.
Yeah.
I mean, we always call him the original Space-Papi, and that's for a reason. And now it's
Mhm.
a, it's a long way that we've come, and obviously still a long way to go because there's no
Mhm.
finish line. We can always do
Yeah.
better, but you know, a show that's the lead, a Mexican actor. We have Oscar Isaac. We have Pedro
Mhm.
Pascal. Obviously, Rosario Dawson
Mhm.
over in Ahsoka. So it's great to see how the world has expanded and evolved, even though some people want to bring it back to
Yeah.
a lesser welcoming time. But the times are changing, and you can't stop them. And while it's good to celebrate all the new faces that have come into the Star Wars galaxy, it's always
Yeah.
important to look back at the ones who set the stage for
Mhm.
all of our wonderful and beautiful space puppies and space mommies to be in Star Wars, and kind of always remember and honor the
And
original one,
celebrate
the
it.
OG. And we always have to roll out the sky blue carpet
Mm.
for our Space-Papi Jimmy Smits. So it's a matter of principle too. It's just like let's honor the
Yeah.
original Star Wars
Honor and
Space-Papi.
celebrate. So I think with that we're done. Any other closing argument? I think
I
we're good.
mean, I could just keep going forever, like
Yeah.
on a lot of these things, but sometimes it's better to keep it short and sweet. And I think
Yeah.
that we'll have a lot more. We'll definitely have so many more words to say once we confirm that Jimmy
If he's
Smits is
actually gonna
in
be on the
Andor
show.
season
Yeah.
2 because
Here's hoping.
we're here's to hoping.
Well, that is it for today. We are Triad of the Force. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, join the Discord, talk amongst yourselves and with
Mhm.
us about what you're expecting for Andor season 2 coming up, Star Wars Celebration, what you think about Bail Organa as a character, Jimmy Smits as an actor, his
Mhm.
possible role in Andor season 2, if you think he's even going to be in Andor season 2 like us, or are we just completely out of our minds? But until next time, Andor season 2 is around the corner, and so is Star Wars Celebration. So I hope that you are excited about
Mhm.
all things Star Wars with us. So until next time, may the Force be with you.